Hello, I'm Charles Goodrich and this is Homeworlds, a mini-series on hub design in video games. A hub can mean many things across many video games. Is it an explorable space? A map screen? A simple level select? What tools does it provide the player? And, more importantly, what makes a good one? In this series, I will try to answer these questions, and I will start by looking at one of my favorite hubs in all of games, the solemn, the captivating, Firelink Shrine. From Software's Dark Souls features many beloved and memorable locations, from the quiet Darkroot Garden, to the fetid Blighttown, to the decadent Anor Londo. But to me, the most evocative space is one of the very first that you'll step into, Firelink Shrine. It's verdant and dilapidated, dreary but welcoming. The music rides this fine line between cozy and despairing. Like most other places in Lordran, it's mysterious and secretive, but more than any other place in this crumbling kingdom, Firelink Shrine feels like a home. The player arrives here after escaping the Northern Undead Asylum via Giant Crow. A brief tutorial about leveling up appears on screen, and from there the player is left immediately to their own devices. In view is also the crestfallen warrior, prompting the player to chat him up for some very vague information on where to go. This lack of obvious direction is a big part of what makes Lordran so special, and it's basically present from the word go. So without substantial direction, where does one even go in Dark Souls? Well, let's try forward. There's a clear path heading down some stairs, and an elevator leading to a new area. The enemies in the staging part of the New Londo ruins are frail and docile, but further in the player will be demolished by spooky ghosts that they can't even damage. If they're lucky, they might grab a Firekeeper's soul before being sent back to Firelink to try again. Maybe that path isn't so viable for now. Alright, take two. How about those ruins to our right? No enemies at all at first. There's even some lower level items, and a friend who goes from telling us to go away, to giving us money, to teaching us spells in 3 dialogue lines. You do you, Petrus. Journeying in a bit further, we end up at a cemetery full of skeletons. They don't even have muscles. How strong could they possibly... Oh no. Okay, so that's 2 paths that the player isn't expected to go at first. Trying one more time, the only way out is behind where we spawn. And lo and behold, this is way more to the speed of a new player. Still challenging, but not crushingly difficult. Those first 2 areas are actually some of the final zones of the game. And by putting them here, and even more accessible than the correct path, From Software has done 2 things. Firstly, they tell the player that the path forward won't be obvious, both in that nobody will tell them which way to go and that the correct path won't always be in front of you. Secondly, that many areas are gated off by difficult encounters rather than hard blockers, for example needing a specific story event to trigger or a particular key. What I mean by that is that New Londo, the graveyard, and subsequently the catacombs are all viable areas to explore. They just demand a lot more out of the player this early on. In addition to these and Undead Burg, there are a few more paths that the player can take, though they require the player to have picked the Master Key as their starting gift, or to have picked the Thief class who begins with that item automatically in order to take them. Perhaps you took the intended route through the game, from the Burg into the Undead Parish during the first Spell of Awakening. From there into the Darkroot Garden and back to Undead Burg, uncovering the path to its lower streets. Then into the sewer depths below that, and Blighttown even further down. Diving deeper into Quelaag's domain, and maybe even exploring a bit of the Demon Ruins after ringing that second Bell of Awakening, until you eventually wonder, excuse me, how am I supposed to get home from here? But then you just ride this makeshift elevator thing up out of Blighttown, and then you find a key in a chest before exiting into the Valley of the Drakes, and then you unlock the store, and you find yourself right back at the start of the game. Huh. Alright. Firelink Shrine is like the epicenter of this maelstrom made of curious exploration and things that want to hurt you with pointy objects. Remember that Undead Church? It links back to this hub. How about that lower Undead Burg? Well, I'll be a pickled peach. That route's back too. Let's head back to that locked door that exits from Blighttown into New Londo. The Master Key opens that door from either side, meaning that the player can go ring the lower bell first. By traversing the valley itself, avoiding the difficult drakes, and not waking Miss Zombie Breath McSleepy Dragon from her nap, the player will arrive into the Darkroot Basin, which leads to the Darkroot Garden, and then to Undead Parish, and hey, look, we just found another way to the first Bell of Awakening. Or seeing as the player has the Master Key going from the Darkroot Basin to the tower containing Havel and up to Undead Burg's boss fight with Taurus Demon. By now we've strayed very far from Firelink's cozy bonfire, but it's critical to note that these options that we have from the starting point are how we get to these places, and it's because Dark Souls lets you wander in many directions that its world design works so well. Routes can be so variable because of this. Want to get a Lord Soul before ringing the second bell? Go ahead. Or how about fighting Pinwheel in the catacombs and getting the Rite of Kindling as soon as you leave the asylum? Or maybe just fighting any later boss right away and getting a colossal sum of souls to level up ludicrously or upgrade weapons to the point of being overpowered. Those are all your choices to make, even if some of them demand a lot from the player. It's from here that things start to go downhill, though. Specifically when the player is granted the Lord Vessel, an item that allows the player to warp between certain bonfires. Additionally, most key locations left to visit are on the fringes of the map. Now this isn't strictly a bad thing. For the most part these areas are challenging, and this routing causes the player to return to old locations now with the strength to power past what were difficult areas. But they don't connect back to Firelink as a result, and thus the player simply treats any of the warpable bonfires as a disconnected extension of their home at Firelink Shrine. It dispels a lot of the magic, and I would have preferred that the layout of these areas be more conducive to traveling on your feet, allowing for the removal of the warp. The variety is very welcome, but if you've been playing Dark Souls for the world design as I have, you might be shocked at the sudden change of pace. So that's how you interact with the world at large via the shrine. But how does this space allow the player to interact with it directly? Why be excited to return home? Okay, so you have Petrus there from the start and Rickert not far below in New Londo, and they sell miracles and basic sorceries respectively. Pretty convenient to have them there from the start, but hey, who knows how long that convenience is gonna last on this journey. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that you're bumming around Undead Burg's lower portion when you hear a cry for help from one of the doors. Fortunately, you bought a residence key from the merchant above and free the poor boy. But he's not just any boy, he's a precious magic boy who says he's going back to Firelink Shrine. So you bump into him there, and he's not just a precious magic boy, he's a precious magic merchant boy ready to teach you spells. Okay, so now let's pretend that you're wandering around the depths, and you walk into this room full of barrels when, wouldn't you know it, a lad is stuck in one of them and calls you over for help. You find out he's not just any lad, he's a wonderful pyro lad, and he's going back to, of all places, Firelink Shrine. So you wind up back at Firelink one way or another, and you find out that he's not just a wonderful pyro lad, he's a wonderful pyro proprietor lad. Firelink Shrine is dynamic, and becomes more useful the more that you explore the world around it. More than just providing services, Firelink Shrine also houses many quests. Sigmire and his daughter Ziglinda both show up here on occasion. All the merchants have their own little story arcs here too, mostly ending in them going crazy and attacking you somewhere else in the world, but hey, what were you expecting in a game like this? And Lautrec, who acts as a buddy to you after you rescue him from captivity, betrays you and kills the Firekeeper who keeps the bonfire here working at all. There's even a side quest of sorts to restore her by finding Lautrec and killing him to get her soul back. This, by necessity, means that each player's version of Firelink Shrine has the capacity to look different from one another. If you want to fight the Four Kings before acquiring the Lord Vessel, you need to kill Ingward, preventing him from moving on up. Maybe after being betrayed by Lautrec, you aren't so keen on trusting cage folks and you kill Big Hat Logan. Maybe you don't find out that Petrus is a monster and leave him alive to kill Rhea. There's an ongoing narrative with these misfits here. This snake guy does more than just eat your items, he encourages you to work with him to relink the First Flame. He guides you to the Firelink Chamber hidden beneath the shrine. It's still a warp, but I feel like it has a logical physical connection to the rest of the world due to the context in which the warp happens. Placing the Lord Vessel upon the altar here opens up the endgame areas, and this room itself is the entrance to the final boss encounter. It's a great reveal that this innocuous place was secretly so important all along. Speaking of secrets, Firelink Shrine has plenty of hidden goodies for you to find. In plain sight littered around the place are 3 humanity, 2 souls of a lost and dead, and some firebombs. If you fall down the elevator shaft to the parish, you'll find a morning star and a talisman, useful for those miracles that Petrus sells you. 6 homeward bones, a handful of cracked red-eye orbs, and some Lloyd's talismans and a pear tree. You are then spat out in the graveyard, meaning that you're about to be boned from all angles. The graveyard contains 2 large souls of a lost undead, the Caduceus round shield, the winged spear, the binoculars, and
Der Zweihander!
Towards the Undead Burg, there's 3 more souls of a lost undead and a cheekily hidden ring of sacrifice under a viaduct that you're likely to sacrifice yourself trying to get. Right away, Dark Souls is putting little trinkets in every corner and a few substantial rewards among them. It makes the space feel lived in, with its own history. Oh, and while we're talking about secrets, I should probably confess that there's actually one more area that you can access from Firelink Shrine. If you ride the elevator from the Undead Church and jump off onto the roof above the shrine's end of the shaft, then jump from the cliff onto a structure, climb up to the top, roll into a ball in a crow's nest for a little while, then the crow will fly you back to the asylum for an additional boss and some loot that leads to yet another secret area, with yet another secret boss and even more secretly. Wowzers. There's even a key along this route to the nest that you need to get a really important ring once you're back at the asylum. Yeah, there's a lot of secret stuff going on here. So that's Firelink Shrine from Dark Souls 1. Shrouded in mystery, encouraging exploration on a grand scale, a place to be excited to visit and revisit. A home, sheltering you from the danger of this dying land found at its very center. But it's not the only Firelink Shrine in video games. After all, the developers of the spectacular Dark Souls 3 chose to keep this moniker for the hub in that game as well, and let's see how it compares. Does it feature a growing cast of NPCs? Yes, you'll find several shopkeepers and side quest related characters strewn about it at various points. They're even better in this game, as many of them have conflicts with one another, or require you to further locate certain items in order to grow their wares. If you listen to Leonhard and join the Fingers of Rosaria, then Cirrus will threaten you. If you buy Dark Miracles from Irina, then her bodyguard Aegon will run away with her to hide her from you. In fact, leveling and smithing are exclusively tied to this location now. You must return here to do either, and it encourages the player to take a look around and talk to everyone again. Are there hidden secrets? Absolutely. In addition to a collection of loot, the means to undo curses is tucked away in the bell tower of the shrine. There's an Estus shard and an illusory wall in the rafters hiding a ring. There's even an optional combat encounter with an old master who drops a katana for you to wield upon defeat. But is this hub on the whole better than the one I just spent forever praising? I'm not convinced. Due to the nature of progression in Dark Souls 3, there's only one way to proceed from here. This hub is completely disconnected physically from the world at large, granting you that hated bonfire warp from the moment that you plop the coiled sword into the ashes, making the bonfire for the shrine. Every time you want to do so much as level up, you need to sit through a load screen in and a load screen out. Sometimes I think the main reason I go and talk to everyone before heading out again is because I know I have to load back in to do so. I'd like to call this kind of hub remote design. The individual areas of Dark Souls 3 are full of details and extra goodies, and the hub is no different. But I feel what was lost in the transition, that feeling of true freedom to explore a world, has been replaced with a challenge to conquer levels in a video game, and that's a damn shame. So what have we learned in this study? Well, good hubs give the players options on where to go, even if those options aren't equally viable. In fact, I would argue that a great hub lets the player go off in a direction that isn't going to work out and allow them to learn from mistakes. A good hub gives you reason to want to come back, be it through story beats or utility. And finally, a good hub acts as a good level in and of itself, with hidden treasures and secrets to be found. It's at this point that I like to distinguish this type of hub design as the Geographical Center, in order to start building up a vocabulary for future projects. Despite their differences, I love both instances of Firelink Shrine. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, and it really just comes down to personal preference in the end. They are both pristine examples of what a home in games should feel like. Hey, hiya, how's it going? Thanks for listening. I had a lot of fun making this one, and I have a bunch of exciting plans on where to take this series. Please give me a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe for more videos to come. Next up is... well, we'll see. Hope to see you then.